The local history and genealogy department, which is, and I'm saying this completely objectively, one of the best in the state. Absolutely, hands down, I would say top 3 best local history departments in the state of New Jersey that's in a public library, open 7 days a week, which is unheard of. So shout out to our local history department. They have done oral histories on a bunch of different groups. Because it's Hispanic Heritage Month, we are advertising our Hispanic and Latino Morris County Oral History Project. And this is sharing your story to preserve our local history. And so we want to hear stories of our Latino and Hispanic population. And we have very valuable local histories. So maybe right now it's not that valuable, but 50 years from now, when people look back, it is extremely valuable. We have them for our African American community, our Italian community, our Irish American community, and they're just such a valuable resource. So we're planning now for the future. Another program that the History Center is doing that I think is going to be super interesting is we do a lot on genealogy. This is identifying the unknown, how investigative genetic genealogy is solving cold cases. So we'll talk about how our genealogy research is helping with solving crimes. That is on Sunday, October 5th at 2 o'clock. Really looking forward to that. A teen program that we have, which is also aimed at parents, is Paying for College on Tuesday, October 7th. This is a Zoom program. Since COVID, we've continued with our Zoom programs, and people are really still very happy to go to Zoom programs. So that is on Zoom Tuesday, October 7th. You can sign up online. Also on Tuesday, October 7th, for those of you who have not been to one of John Kenrick's programs, he's the best. He's the best. He's a local resident, lives in Morristown, and he very generously donates his time. The series that we have this fall is Classics of American Comedy. October 7th is the Marx Brothers. So that is also in person and on Zoom. It's a hybrid program that we do. It's fantastic. He's great. I cannot recommend John highly enough. He's a resident who donates his time. And then last but not least, we have a program on Medicare open enrollment on Monday, November 10th. This is eye-opening. So anyone who doesn't think that they're near enough to this, when I went to this, my jaw just dropped. We had the program last year. It's very interesting and valuable. It's presented by another one of our community groups that we like to partner with. And this is Nora Westcap, the SHIP State Health Insurance Assistance Programs. And this is a volunteer expert. It is not somebody who's selling a product. These people are volunteer experts on the topic. That is not trying to sell you anything. Nora Westcap is a very highly regarded local community group. And we also have all of our films, programs, and our book club. I heard someone speaking about this earlier. All of our programs are funded by the Friends of the Morristown and Morris Township Library. So the folks who present our book sales and do our fundraising, they are providing the funds for everything from the paper and the copies for the flyers to the coffee and the tea and all of the things that we need to present our programs. So patronize our used book sale. They raise a ton of money and they are fantastic, extremely dedicated volunteers, and we're very lucky and blessed to have them. So another group that we're lucky and blessed to have in town, League of Women Voters. Take it away. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Robin, and thank you to the library for co-hosting this event with the League of Women Voters, and for hosting us in this room. I'm Kathy Abbott, co-president of the Morris Area League of Women Voters, and we are a nonpartisan organization that we say is political, but to educate voters and defend democracy, and we've been around for 105 years. We originated, you may all know, with the suffragist movement. They were the ones looking for the women's vote, not advocating for the women's vote, fighting for the women's vote, and then they needed to educate the voters, especially the women, to even get out and vote. Right now, the reason why we're here as the League of Women Voters to talk about open space is because there are two ballot questions. One is for Morris County and one is for Morristown. And there are two main aspects of open space that we're going to hear about from our panel of 3 experts. And the experts are here from a statewide perspective, a regional perspective, and the Morristown municipal perspective. But open space in New Jersey, the history of it is actually someone's going to have a slide on that. It started with Christie Whitman's administration, which was a Republican administration. It's been a bipartisan issue, winning on the ballot for every ballot question almost all the time. And I just want to say that there's open space acquisition, and then there's open space maintenance, and those are two different purposes for which money from our open space taxes can go. So there'll be a lot of talk about that, and you'll see that the Morristown proposed, the question is that you need to start an open space trust fund, and to fill that fund you need a dedicated tax, an open space tax. The county question is about not adding, it already has an open space tax. So if you're a Morris County resident, you're already paying into that. But it's about a different use, which the experts will explain, use of the same pool of money. I'll give the bios of the 3 speakers. They are Anthony Cucci, Director of Programs, New Jersey Conservation Foundation, and Elliot Ruga, Policy and Communications Director, New Jersey Highlands Coalition, Paula Zeman, Morristown Shade Tree Commission, and Burnham Park Association committee member. Anthony joined New Jersey Conservation Foundation as Director of Programs in October 2024, where he helps to lead the organization's land protection, urban action, and public policy efforts. Having worked to conserve land and create urban parks and green spaces for the past 25 years in New Jersey and elsewhere, Anthony focuses on ensuring that all New Jersey residents have access to high-quality parks and natural areas. Anthony's previous work experience includes serving as superintendent of parks for the Mercer County Park Commission, where he oversaw new park development projects and a variety of environmental programs. Prior to that, he was state director for the Trust for Public Land and oversaw land protection programs and growth of urban park programs in Newark, Philadelphia, Camden, and other New Jersey cities. Anthony has a bachelor's degree in history from Cornell University and a master's of forestry from Yale University. I have Elliot Ruga, the second speaker, from the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. He has over 23 years of environmental and historic preservation advocacy experience. Working with the coalition since November of 2007, he leads the implementation of media and educational campaigns. Elliot represents the coalition's concerns at Highlands Council meetings and with municipal and county officials, state legislators, and regulators. Elliot provides guidance to grassroots groups in support of projects that align with the coalition's mission. He has a professional background of communications and multimedia production, awarded 2 Emmys, including 17 years at NBC. And Paula Zeman is a member of the Morristown Shade Tree Commission and Burnham, a passionate local advocate for green spaces and a member of both the Morristown Shade Tree Commission and Burnham Park Association. Deeply invested in the well-being of her community, Paula works to ensure that Morristown parks, trees, and natural areas continue to thrive for future generations. Whether planting trees, advising on park plans, or speaking at public forums, she brings people together around the shared goal of preserving and improving the open spaces that define Morristown's character. Paula will talk about the Open Space Trust Fund, a powerful tool that helps towns like Morristown protect natural areas, enhance parks, and create lasting community spaces. She'll share how local support and thoughtful planning come together to turn public investment into long-term environmental and recreational benefits for everyone. And now we go to Anthony.
Good evening, everybody. I feel like I've got a lot to live up to after that bio. I mean, I'm a little intimidated here. But as Kathy said, you know, my name is Anthony Kuki, and I work for the New Jersey Conservation Foundation. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with our organization, but we've been around for about 65 years, and our origin story actually begins here in Morris County. You know, we were organized by a number of open space volunteers who were interested in trying to prevent a jet port from being developed around the Great Swamp, and you know they put lots of time and energy into that campaign. Ultimately, we're successful in getting the Great Swamp recognized as a national preserve, and that was just the beginning. So 65 years later, you know, we've continued those efforts across the state, helping to establish preserved lands that are accessible to the public for recreation and for wildlife protection. We've not only acquire and manage land ourselves, but we assist communities in the state and lots of other entities in advancing their open space goals. So we work in partnership with a number of municipalities across the state. And so with that background, you know, I'm pleased to talk a little bit about the trends in open space protection and how fortunate New Jersey is to have had the foresight of it for many years now to invest in open space protection at the state level. And also I can talk a little bit about how the local level funding for open space and what we call stewardship has evolved over the last several decades. I also will talk a little bit about my experience in Mercer County. You know, like Morris County, several years ago, Mercer County asked its voters whether we could amend the Mercer County open space tax to adjust the allocations of funding that those taxes were supporting to allow for more stewardship activities, so that some of the land that was being acquired could be better managed for the ecological resources that it was intended to be protected for. So I'll touch on that a little bit as well. So Nature for All. That, in summary, is what the New Jersey Conservation Foundation is all about. But it's also the name of a report that was issued about a year ago, in which both New Jersey Conservation Foundation staff and a whole host of experts from across the state did sort of a deep dive at assessing what our accomplishments as an open space community have succeeded in over the last 50 years, and what it's going to take in order to move forward to actually you know, scale up our land protection work. So after assessing all the preserved lands that exist across the state, we've identified, which is a lot, I will mention. You know, we've protected as a community about 1/3 of our land base across the state, which is actually one of the leading states. I mean, across the country, we have a higher percentage of our land mass protected than every other state, with perhaps the exception of Maryland, although there's some debate about that. But so there's about 1 million acre, a third of our acreage that is already developed. So we have a third that's protected, a third that's developed, and we have about a third left that's sort of up in the air. And so, as the most densely populated state in the nation, you know, we are really going to be the first state to be fully built out. And that means basically all land is either going to be protected or developed in one way, shape, or form. So with that in mind, we feel as though it's time to double down on our land protection efforts. We had dual goals coming out of that Nature for All report. One was to aim to permanently protect an additional 500,000 acres, or half of what's the most important remaining land that's at risk by the year 2050. So we, in shorthand, call that our 50 by 50 campaign, and we're just launching that now with a number of other organizations to try and build support for that vision. And hopefully our next governor will sign on and adopt that as their commitment as well. The complementary agenda item that we have is within our cities to establish greener and more livable cities throughout New Jersey. And you know, if you look at the environmental injustices across our state, you know, our cities have been really at the receiving end of a lot of the unhealthy land uses, and our rural areas have tended to benefit more from open space protection. So we're really looking to ensure that our cities are equally benefiting from the green investments that the state has been making. So with that, I can get into Morris County and where we're at here. So in terms of the history of the land protection movement in New Jersey, the state, in addition to committing to spending open space dollars at the state level, they also passed enabling legislation back in 1989, which allowed municipalities and counties to consider the adoption of their own open space taxes so that they could leverage the funding that was available at the state level to do more with land protection and conservation within their geographies. So Morris County was actually among on the leading edge of pursuing the establishment of an open space trust fund, and just several years later, the voters successfully passed the establishment of an open space trust fund for the county and county residents. You know, soon after Morris County, many other municipalities and counties followed suit. We now have every county in the state has its own open space trust fund, voter-approved open space trust funds at the county level. And last time, this is a few years old, this statistic here, but well more than 250 municipalities across the state have also chosen to tax themselves for open space within their municipality. The enabling legislation allows municipalities and counties to define what they want their open space trust fund to be allowed to spend the dollars on. And so there's a set list of potential uses or eligible uses. They include farmland preservation, open space acquisition, park development, stewardship, historic preservation, water resource protection. And so it's up to the municipality or the county to determine what the appropriate uses within those options are for your community. So the Morris County Open Space Trust Fund, when it was initially adopted, it's been revised several times actually, but is currently the eligible uses are open space preservation, farmland preservation, historic preservation, trail construction, and a park improvement trust fund, which is funding that's spent on the county's inventory of parks, so that it helps to support the county park system. So you'll notice here, you know, there's funding available through this open space preservation component of the Morris County open space tax. There are grants available to municipalities, and so that's been one of the primary sources of that expenditure from the county's open space trust fund. So since 1992 or 1993, municipalities have applied to the county to secure matching funds for them to spend within their municipality on the acquisition of open space. And it's been hugely successful, but the towns that have not had an open space tax have been contributing, their residents are contributing tax dollars to the county and have not been able to access any of that funding if they didn't have an open space tax and were not pursuing the acquisition of open spaces. So just to take a quick detour back at the state level, one of the things that our Nature for All study looked at was the pace of conservation in New Jersey over the years. One of the striking things that we realized is that while there continues to be significant funding at the state level for open space, the actual acreage protected by year has actually been in a somewhat of a steep decline over the last several years. And there's a variety of factors that arguably kind of contribute to that trend. But one of them for sure is the fact that many municipalities and other entities that typically acquire and hold land for conservation are beginning to be reluctant to accept more land, because with it comes the responsibility of managing that land. And so while there's money for acquiring land, there isn't sufficient money to support the stewardship and maintenance of those parcels. So that's happening at the state level. And similarly, at the county level, this bar graph represents over time, over the last 30 years, I believe, the number of acres protected within the municipalities that have successfully received grant funding from Morris County. So this is all the land that's been protected through the county's open space grant program to municipalities. And so without pointing out the acreage amounts, you can obviously see that there's been a steep decline over the last decade, really, where there's very little land being protected. There are fewer and fewer municipalities applying for grants for land protection because, most likely, because there either are fewer parcels that are a priority for acquisition, or there's a lack of resources to care for those lands, and so there's been a slowdown in the appetite for acquiring land because of that lack of resources. So that gets us to the Morris County referendum question. Essentially, it's just expanding the eligible uses of the trust fund to allow for the use of these funds to go towards stewardship. And that while the language itself doesn't specify how those stewardship dollars can be spent, the intent of the county is to establish a stewardship grant program so that municipalities, similar to the open space program, can apply for funding from the county to support the stewardship and care and restoration of properties that are permanently protected and conserved within the municipality. So the establishment of this program, even if the town doesn't necessarily have its own open space tax, they'd be eligible to pursue funding through the stewardship grant program. How much is available, what the leveraging is, whether there's matching dollars, that remains to be seen. But most likely, if it's similar to the county's open space grant program, there'll be a matching requirement. So for every dollar that the county provides, it would need to be matched with a dollar of local funding or other funding from some other source. But again, that hasn't been fully rolled out yet, but I understand that's what the intent is. At the municipal level, the open space ballot question, again, establishes the eligible uses of the open space trust fund if it's adopted, and it includes being able to acquire land for conservation, to develop land that's already in the municipality's hands for park and recreational uses. It also allows for maintenance and stewardship of land, whether they're acquired with this fund or whether they're already in the inventory, the town's inventory. And additionally, conservation easements. Another tool for protecting land is something called conservation easements, where the municipality may not directly own property, but it can acquire an easement which permanently restricts the future uses of that property. So a conservation easement is simply a legal mechanism that prohibits certain uses on a property, and many municipalities and conservation organizations over the years have protected a whole lot of land by acquiring conservation easements. The land remains in private ownership, but the owner is not, it has to abide by those restrictions, whether it's that owner or a future owner or three owners in the future, it's permanently subject to that conservation easement. So that was my quick lesson on conservation easements. The Open Space Trust Fund could be used to help with monitoring and enforcing those conservation easements. So making sure that the owner of that property doesn't violate the terms. Build a shed where it's supposed to be, free of any sort of an infrastructure, for instance. And then finally, the payment of debt service for the uses that are mentioned in the Open Space Trust Fund. So again, many communities that have Open Space Trust Funds, they'll utilize, if there's a huge conservation priority in the town that might be more valuable than the trust fund is generating in revenue each year, can bond against future revenue from the trust fund in order to come up with the funding necessary to acquire a property. So lots of towns would make use of this mechanism, save the Smith farm for $2 million, and then pay down the debt service over the next 15 or 20 years to pay back for that investment in land protection. So that's the summary of eligible uses. I know Paul is going to be talking in more detail about the history and the intent here on that. So I think I'll wrap up my remarks with that.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Ruga. I'm the Policy and Communications Director at the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. And it's fitting that I follow you, Anthony. So I talk about our origin story. The Highlands Coalition started as a program of the New Jersey Conservation Foundation back in 1988, a loose coalition of organizations who understood the resource and ecological values of the Highlands region and saw how much land was being lost on a yearly basis to sprawl development, and knew something had to be done to protect it. and they engaged the U.S. Forest Service, who did quite a detailed study of the region. They came to that same conclusion. That led to the governor at the time, McGreevy, forming a Highlands Task Force, which recommended a regional authority and regulations. So in 2004, the Highlands Water Protection and Planning Act was passed, which, according to this map, the darker green in the center is the preservation area of the Highlands, which has the greatest concentration of valuable natural resource values. And the outer is the planning area. And the goals of the Highlands Act would be accomplished in two different ways. In the preservation area, by strict regulation under the DEP's Highlands rules, and in the planning area by voluntary conformance to a regional master plan, which was drafted and adopted by the Highlands Council in 2008. The New Jersey Highlands Coalition became a freestanding 501c3 nonprofit in 2007, when it was felt we were mature enough and we had quite a job to do. Because even though the Highlands Act had been passed, there are constant attempts to undermine the work of the Highlands Council and to weaken the Highlands rules. Because in northern New Jersey, land values only rise, development pressures only increase, and the want to develop that land has always been great. So I wanted to put Morristown in this regional context. Morristown is part of the Highlands. It's in the planning area located right about over here, little lollipop on 287. It's in the planning area. But the importance of the Highlands to the rest of the state can't be overestimated. Every colored section on this map, and it doesn't show the whole state of New Jersey in the extent. These are municipalities that depend on water from the Highlands. 70% of New Jersey's population gets some or all of its drinking water from the New Jersey Highlands, going all the way down to Burlington County. So I really don't look at the Highlands Coalition as a regional organization. I look at our clients as throughout the state, that we are a state organization. So I'm sure everybody in this room knows what a watershed is, but just in case, unfortunately, the municipal boundary of, well, you can see it. Here is Morristown, and here is most of Morristown is in this up 14 sub-watershed, which extends as far east as Hanover, north to Morris Plains, Cedar Knolls, and west well into Morris Township. And a watershed is a common area of land whose, because of topography, the outer edges are higher elevation and all the water drains to a common water source, which means to say that land uses outside of your municipality that you may have no control over will have impacts on the water quality and some quality of life of your municipality. And to a large extent, Morristown has very little control over that. So their preserved lands are as important as your preserved lands. And this is a map showing the preserved lands of the region. The dark purple are municipal owned lands. The sort of lighter purple is county owned land. The green is county. The light purple is nonprofit owned open space. Like for instance, this is owned by Passaic River Coalition up near up at Willow Hall. This is the Whippany River and Lake Pocahontas. This is Foots Pond and Lidgerwood Park, just to put this in context. Here's the privately held Morristown Green, owned by the trustees of the Morristown Green. So Morristown itself does not have a lot of municipal-owned open space. This is the same thing with the street map underlying. So, and I wanted to point out wildlife corridors that you have in Morristown and the surrounding region. And these are riparian areas that also wildlife uses to move around to the extent of their habitat. So you can see in these light green areas, these riparian corridors, or riparian areas, which are also wildlife corridors, where you may have small properties worth preserving because you get a lot of impact in preserving them, to maintain them as not only wildlife corridors that contribute to the water quality of the stream they surround. This is an interesting map. This is a map of state conservation priority, where the state of New Jersey concentrates its purchase power to purchase land, and none of it is inside of Morristown. They have different rankings. They're looking for large lots that connect with other large lots. So it wouldn't be likely that the state of New Jersey on its own would be purchasing land in Morristown. But if you had a municipal open space tax, you could purchase land, and you can go to the state and ask for their help. And just because they're not going to buy it and own it, they would help you purchase it. And you know, Morristown has quite a development bubble right now. I think small lots that were naturally restored, like the former lumber yard near the train station, that would be quite a purchase. And to restore that to a natural state would be incredible, but extremely expensive. I mean, a lot of concrete would have to be broken up and taken away, plantings made, but it would enhance the value of that area and the water quality and the quality of life incredibly. But you would have to do that using, if Morris County passed its stewardship funding at this upcoming ballot. Also, did you know, I mean, Morristown gets its water, I think, from Southeast Morris Municipal Utilities Authority, but they have a variety of places where they get their water from. And there are 3 public community wells in Morristown that are being drawn as a water source. And these need to be protected. Land uses on top of them, we need to be careful about because spills and contaminants can get to the water supply, and that could have dire consequences for your water supply. And there's also something that's protected by Highlands Regional Master Plan, which many municipalities protect through their environmental resource inventory, are prime groundwater recharge areas, which are the lands that are the major contributors to groundwater recharge. And they're shown here in the lighter blue, superimposed under preserved lands. So you can see what's already been preserved as prime ground water recharge areas, and what still can be preserved with, if you had municipal open space dollars to spend.
You say it's light blue?
Can you point some of the
These, yes, these are the prime ground recharge areas. And these are already preserved lands. You can see that this has been preserved over a large extent of prime groundwater recharge.
Where is that?
This is Foots Pond, and
Next door is Thomas Jefferson School.
Yes.
That's where that's.
And that's Lidgerwood Park. I'm not sure what this is, but that's privately.
That's 11 acres owned by New Jersey Conservation Foundation. 9 acres, excuse me.
What do you call it, Anthony? Is it an acre?
What do you call it?
And adjacent to it are 2 acres owned by the town that they call vacant.
The official term.
And are they on the resource inventory?
That must be,
That's off of
I
what?
don't even see it.
You don't see it.
You can't see this dark green so readily.
That,
But that's federal, so that's
that's for nonsense.
that's Fort Nonsense. And over here is Washington State Forest. Well, that's it as far as my slides. But there is I believe, a very strong case to pass municipal open space tax, because you have properties that may not attract the attention of the state or necessarily the county, but for the community character of Morristown and quality of life and the quality of its water resources, a case could be made. And these are smaller lots than typically would be considered by the county and the state, which doesn't mean to say they would not help you participate, would not participate to help you purchase them.
Hi everybody, I'm Paula Zimmon, and I'm going to counter Kathy's comment. I am not an expert on Open Space Trust Fund. If I were an expert, I'd be talking about buildings, because I'm an architect and energy efficiency and sustainability architect, so that's what I would be talking about if I were an expert tonight, but I am not an expert. I'm more of a boots on the ground resident perspective. There's a picture of me and my crew at the BPA this past winter. We were in Burnham Park doing invasive removals on trees in the wildlife area in the back of the park. I have been a Morristown resident for 16 years. I've been on the Shade Tree Commission here in town for almost 5 years now. Burnham Park Association 6 years. I got 2 boys at Frelinghuysen Middle School, and like I said, I'm an architect and energy and sustainability researcher, consultant, all of the above. But today, to share with you a little bit about my experience here in town and why I think the Open Space Trust Fund is an important thing for our town, is related to what I have seen in the last couple of years here in town. So, on the Shade Tree Commission, we coordinate maintenance and restoration work with the town of Morristown. We help to create ordinances for protection of trees and shrubs. We help to develop partnerships with community organizations and other area organizations, and we try to learn and share. We learn as we go. We provide training as much as we can and build awareness of our natural spaces here in town. On the Burnham Park side, I have some Burnham Park colleagues here. With Burnham Park Association, this is an organization that has existed for over 75 years. Burnham Park was a donation from the Burnham family, and the Burnham Park Association is here to steward Burnham Park and other surrounding parks, trails, and open spaces. The Burnham Park Association worked actively with the town and other township, other stakeholders to support the development of the Burnham Park Revitalization Plan, which was published in 2023. And then what I really want to highlight here, other than if you don't know about it, it's online, you should take a look at it. This plan outlines over $3 million worth of projects, and that was 2 years ago. We have all seen inflation go crazy, so I'm sure that it's much more than $3 million at this point in time. But these are projects to update, bring improvements to one of our more natural parks here in town. And I really want to highlight, it's going to take money in order to bring our parks to the level of natural wilderness that we want to experience. And the Open Space Trust Fund is a great way. It's already existing here in New Jersey. We here in Morristown should be taking advantage of this resource so that we can realize some of those projects. I'll also counter an argument from Elliot that we do have a lot of parks. We have 16 parks here in town, and if you don't know all the names of the parks, please learn them and visit them. They're wonderful parks. There's 2 in Ward 1 and 5 in Ward 2, 3 in Ward 3, and Ward 4 has 6 of them. Some of you, I've talked about Burnham Park, but there's in Ward 4, there's Foots Pond Wood you might also be familiar with, and Lidgerwood Park. Elliott Street is a great little corner park that connects into the Speedwell Lake area. Jersey Avenue Playground is a playground that the Shade Tree Commission helped to replant. Got rid of a lot of invasives in there and put a whole bunch of new trees a couple of years ago. Jacob Ford Park right now, we're working on removing invasives at the moment and trying to reforest some areas. So the Shade Tree Commission is very active around town. I love that there's also opportunity to purchase new land in Morristown, but one of my real concerns is just maintenance and stewardship of these parks and bringing these parks back up to their natural condition for all of us to enjoy. So by the numbers, over 172 acres of open space in town. We are only 3 square miles and we have this much acreage to take care of. 4 water features that Foots Pond Wood, they dredged the bottom of the lake. A lot of leaf debris and stuff builds up over time in order to restore the waterways. You have to dredge that out. We're planning on doing that in Burnham Park. Again, takes money. We need matching funds. We need grant money to be eligible for. 3 parks with walking trails, great to be outside and enjoy nature. 7 basketball courts, 6 ball fields, 13 playgrounds, pools, tennis courts, pickleball courts, right? We all love them. And freestyle, oh, I had a nerve there. But you know, all of these great areas for us to enjoy the outdoors, but all of this takes stewardship and ongoing maintenance that the town has done a good job with planning for that maintenance over time, but there's so much more that can be done. What can be done? Like I said, the waterway management and improving our walking paths in various parks, play fields and court surfaces need to be redone. Accessibility, like we recently, Morristown was recently named one of the best places to retire. Great, but can you get to our parks in your older age with your little walking sticks? I would worry about that with my own parents. So making them accessible, some new lighting, just natural area management, and then acquisition of open spaces. Again, not my forte, not what I know. I know what our existing open spaces are, and we really need some investment in that. So just wanted to share with you what my experience has been here in Morristown and what I see and why I think this is such a great opportunity for us to take advantage of.
Well, thank you very much to all 3 speakers, and you all contributed so much to my knowledge, and I hope everyone's here. And we would love to have an active discussion, or at least question and answer from the audience. Is anybody, do you have a question?
I guess I was really disturbed by the statistics and the decline in acquisition of open space in New Jersey in the last decade. And I kind of only heard speculation as to the cause. And given the importance of that, and you know that this is really, if you don't get it now, you don't get it in many cases, because it will be gone. Do we have a detailed report that really digs into and explains decline in acquisition?
Yeah,
that's a reference.
That's a very good and fair question. There is no report that has, clearly has identified the reasons for this decline. So really, at this point, there is no way to prove what the reasons are.
And yet you want us to act upon.
But based on, so what the conservation community is actually in the process of doing right now is identifying current obstacles that we feel may be slowing down the pace of conservation. And without going into too much detail, there's a variety of changes that could be made that would increase the pace, allow for the pace to increase. Real quick, the values that can be offered to landowners for the sale of their property, to conserve their property, in some cases has gone down. Within the Farmland Preservation Program, for example, that for those who are familiar with the Farmland Preservation Program, it's a state agency that acquires those restrictions, permanent restrictions that require that farmland continue to be used and available for farming forever, cannot be developed further. The value of those restrictions is determined by the value of the property in its current form, with its potential to be developed into other uses, versus what the farm would be worth after it's permanently protected. So if a 100-acre farm could be developed into 100 house lots, and the value of that development, the sale of that property for development is $10 million, but if the value of that farm, just for farming, and without the ability to develop it further, is worth $5 million, the difference in those two values is the value of the restriction, $5 million in that case. And so over time, the value of restricted farmland has actually gone up. There are lots of people who are willing to pay a premium for a large preserved property in some places. Horse country, right? Many purchasers don't care whether a farm can be developed further or not. They're willing to pay a premium just to have a large estate farm, if you will, right? And so that's reduced the interest among unrestricted farm owners to sell their properties for conservation, because they can get just as much without restricting it first. So that's one example. Other examples are, as I said, there's definitely been a decline, and I can say, speaking for my organization, there's been a reluctance to acquire more land without the resources to care for it. Because what we're trying to protect is that there are the wildlife values, water resource values, and so many of the lands that we acquire, if without active management, those ecological values deteriorate because of invasive species take over these properties. And so, again, the resources we're trying to protect are not being protected without good stewardship.
I guess you're asking me to vote on something, but you don't have a detailed report that would explain why I should vote that way.
Are you talking about Morristown?
No, actually the county one is a reassignment of existing funds, and there's gotta be a reason behind it, and I'm not comfortable you're able to reference a detailed report that justifies
It's
it.
not reassignment though.
Yeah,
Right? It's not a reassignment. It's just expanding the use
Which
case.
amounts to a reassignment.
So yeah,
Could be
It
same function,
could
different
be,
scope,
could
that's
be.
not reassignment, that's just expansion of
Do you,
scope.
are you looking for a study of the value of preserving open space in general, or one specifically to
I
preserving
guess
lots in
looking at
Morristown?
the Morris County vote, just a reference to a more detailed explanation of why one should vote this way or that way.
For Morris County or Morristown, or both?
I'm in the township, so I only really care about the county.
So-
I think people in town would care about both.
Yeah, so I would point you to the county's website. The county did commission a study before recommending this ballot measure that looked at the success rate of the county's open space programs and the impact of the trust fund, and their conclusion from interviews in this. There's a 10-page report that is available online. Again, I'm not directly involved in Morris County's deliberations. I'm just describing the process and what's available and what's, I'm not a Morris County resident. I don't have a stake in the issue, but I'm really
That's fine.
interested
And
in
it's
sharing.
easy to find on the county website.
Thank you.
I'm concerned about something though, that the state farmland preservation program and the state Green Acres program currently has $1.2 billion in unspent funds, which is Green Acres is not telling us why it's there. We got this number from the Garden State Preservation Trust, which is the agency that gets the money from Treasury and from the corporate business tax and provides it to the three agencies that distribute it. That's a lot of money, and if we get the wrong governor, that may be taken away. Some of it has been, I'm sure, is being held for projects that are in process, but that's a lot of money. And a question for Anthony. The chart, can you go back to the chart of the rate of purchases over the past few years? Could some of this be mitigated? That's it.
No.
That was it. Go forward one. Or back one, I'm sorry.
Oh, the line.
This one, yeah. This is in acreage, Anthony. I'm wondering if we are now purchasing smaller lots, that this wouldn't be quite as dramatic, if that is the case.
Yeah, like the number of purchases as opposed to, like, the spike might have been only 5 purchases at very large quantities versus 100 little purchases.
To a certain extent, right. I think that is right. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this report that the New Jersey Conservation Foundation commissioned, Nature for All, that too is available on our website. I left newsletters at the front, which has a reference to our website if you want to see that. But we did look at that and analyze transactions as well.
Could you tell us what each of those lines
Oh,
represents
yeah.
by the color?
Sure, so that's the amount, so the orange one at the top is acreage that was directly acquired by the state, so these are state lands, that tracks what the state has purchased directly to add to state land holdings. The green is nonprofit lands, so organizations like mine, that tracks what has been acquired and is owned by nonprofits. And the yellow is local, so municipalities and what they've acquired over time with state funding.
Thank you.
Concerning Morristown specifically, I'm interested that you referenced the number of parks, and obviously the town is currently maintaining those parks, not as much as you would like, obviously, but my concern about a new fund would be if the fund generates more money and the town says, great, we don't need to spend so much, how can we be assured that the new trust fund is going to be protected and applied without reducing the money that's coming from other sources?
Sure, yeah. It's my understanding, again, not the expert, but it's my understanding that the Open Space Trust Fund is not there for maintenance. So what the Department of Public Works, for example, does on a day-to-day basis to maintain our parks, they would continue to be doing that, and that would continue to be part of our budget in town. It would be those improvement projects for invasive species, stewardship. We have lots of documentation of invasive species throughout our parks, and those long-term improvements that are going to be necessary for our current parks, hopefully new open spaces that we can acquire in the future. It's a bucket of money that also helps us to be eligible for more funding. Not having an open space trust fund reduces the eligibility of different grants that we can go after. If we don't have an open space trust fund, we have fewer grants that we are eligible for.
Can I help answer that question?
Sure.
Actually, I'm Bob Anik, I'm actually first ward council person, and actually, we just bumped into each other. Nathan Umbriak, who's actually our council president, is here today. I honestly was just picking up a book, so. But to add on to what you just said, yes and no. It does have maintenance in there, and one of the things we had questioned actually at the council meetings was just that. We should not be using these monies for routine maintenance. That is the job of the town, and that's part of what should be included in our normal tax rate, okay? And we do try to maintain them to the degree that's reasonable with the monies that we pass through on taxes. However, the big point is exactly what you said. Conservation projects, trees and the like, and matching funds is the biggest benefit of this. And this is something that was discussed at the council meetings. But I think another point, just to go back to the gentleman with the arm, Graham. Just go back to Graham. To what degree do you find that what's really going on is actually the competing interests that a town is being pushed into? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, particularly on low and moderate income housing applications. So you have a lot of pressure on the town, like of the example of Morris Township would be the men in fields. You know, you used to have some wonderful baseball fields there, you had a couple of soccer fields there. In Morristown, we needed those fields because we share the rec programs with the township, and they disappeared for affordable housing. to build affordable housing. Do you think that's, particularly when you get into the urban areas, are you finding that's the competing purpose that may be adding to the decrease in preservation?
You know, Mount Laurel 1 and 2 repeatedly says that affordable housing obligations should not come at the expense of open space and environmental and environmentally sensitive areas. That doesn't mean that housing advocates are not going full tilt to get as much as they can, but this is the law, and I think we don't hear it, and we should make our officials aware of that.
I just want to say, as League of Women Voters, the referendum is to go ahead with the general concept, and then the governing body has to implement it with very strict legal terms. Go ahead.
It's a good point, because the point you're making, and it is true, it's actually in the budget process. So the element of control is actually in the budget process itself, because the council is actually approving the budget, which is establishing what the rate for the open space is going to be every year. Because it's not a set rate in the ordinance.
It's every single year.
Every single year. So where the public, okay, in Morristown we do a good job of this. I don't know how good of a job we do in the township, but in Morristown we do a good job. Okay? And people do come out, they do speak on these type of issues. We do get a lot of input on the budget. But it's going to be something where you, as residents of Morristown, will have the opportunity during the budget process to see what are we doing with these open funds, how are the funds being raised, and how the funds being applied. And there could be years where the budget is such that you don't do it. Although I doubt it, because it's such a de minimis amount of money on each home.
And could I just add to that?
I think once you have the tax, you can lower it to the minimum range that's in the ordinance, but there's always a range, but there's no zero, I'm pretty sure.
Well, no, I don't. So there's not always a range. That really relies on the ballot question. So when a ballot question is developed and put on the ballot, that will dictate it. So the language in the Morristown ballot allows for up to a certain amount of funding per year. So,
I put it on the screen.
Okay. Yeah, up to 5 cents per $100 of assessed value. So each year during the budgeting process, the municipality would need to determine how much up to that 5 cents are they going to collect. In other municipalities, you can adopt an open space trust fund that has a set rate that says we will collect 2 cents per $100 of assessed value every year, and it takes away the ability to be flexible and make those adjustments from year to year. There's pros and cons to each of those approaches. Morris County has the same as the proposed ballot question here, where Morris County, the county commissioners each year can decide how much they're going to collect. There have been years when they've reduced their collection to 1/4 cent or 1/2 cent because of budget challenges elsewhere. They didn't want to increase the overall tax rate, so they lowered the open space collection in order to allow for the growth in the operating budget. And so that's they're having some flexibility there is, I mean, it can be useful, and it can grow over time, right? It may be that while you have up to 5 cents, in year one you start with 1 cent to just get your bearings and kind of figure out how it's going to work and what can be done with that revenue or not. You know, it's really up to this.
Can I do a follow-up question? This is for my own education. And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. And I think the answer is no, but I'm going to ask anyway. If you have intense development going on in town, can you do an assessment on that new development so there is a catch-up on capital contributions? Let me give you the example. The example is we all live in town, we're constantly paying our taxes, we're contributing to this fund, and then the property gets developed and the new property has not been contributing to that fund. Okay, with the way it's being developed. Usually it's being developed with much more density than its prior use. Can you do a tax on the development itself, almost like a developer fee, depending on the intensity to actually add contributions into that fund?
So
A different mechanism.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a land use attorney, but I believe that's not permissible.
That's what I thought.
I know folks have looked into betterment fees for development projects as well on this.
I'd like to just, you have in Morristown, you have 1% for art.
Arts, that's where I was
Right.
using these examples.
And so you can have, I assume that the town council could implement some sort of,
Now, that's the question I'm asking.
I know, but I'm just saying that, it wouldn't necessarily be specifically, connected to this referendum, but for a future thing, that if you were talking about future developments, just like you say, for new development, you set aside 1% for art, you set aside 1% for open space, and then you can define it. And I'd like to also just get back to what
Right.
Ms. Graham was saying before, if I may. When you said it was being redirected, I think the point was made, and I'd like to just reiterate that it's being expanded, it's not being redirected necessarily. Those funds exist, it's not gonna be an additional county tax. It's that fund pool is already there. And yet, if it can be used to help enhance, to remove invasives, to, plant trees where others have died or had to be removed, like the ash trees or the beech trees, these are things that enhance the property value of the open space that's already been acquired. And I don't think that should be viewed in a negative way, or, oh, you're redirecting it someplace else. You have to look at it as a holistic picture and understand that if it is enhancing or expanding the use of trust funds to take care of that open space that has been acquired and monitor it and steward it properly, that's perfectly valid and not, diversionary tactic in terms of how you're utilizing the funds. And I also think it's important for people to understand that the funds, especially depending on the way the referendums are written and the implementation, but these are dedicated funds. It's not like, the town collects it, but then they decide they don't want to put it towards open space, they want to put it towards something else, or they don't want to put it towards stewardship. It's dedicated, it has to be used for that purpose, or collected and maintained. Like you said, there's a tremendous amount that's been retained by the state, and that money can be, sequestered in a sense to then be used for larger projects. Things that are expensive, like Paula was saying about hydro raking a pond or dredging a pond, which is very expensive, and yet it's really necessary periodically to ensure the proper flow of the river and the tributaries that feed that pond. So, these are ultimately beneficial for the maintenance and the functioning of the open spaces that we all treasure.
The county expanded its use of their open space funding a few years ago, which, if Morristown had access to, would be very advantageous. That they now will fund the cost of demolition, which they hadn't done in the past.
Right.
And I could see that be very useful.
That was the other point. Morristown is one of very few municipalities in this area. Almost everything around it, even Morris Township, has an open space trust fund. Morristown does not. And the idea of being able to leverage, because once you have an open space trust fund, as Paula said and others have said, you are eligible for state and county grants that otherwise you're not eligible for. And you also get fast-tracked for some of those grants, which can otherwise, you can linger for years trying to apply, or you can only apply every 3 years because you're not in the pool of people or municipalities that have that open space trust fund. So it's a great leveraging tool to maximize what a town has at its disposal, and it's yearly, it's every year.
27 of the 39 Morris County municipalities have open space trust funds.
It's a great leveraging tool, but I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Go ahead.
I guess it's more for you, Paula, because I don't think we'll discuss it in Scott's meeting. Who would do the grant writing? Would it be an employee of Morristown?
Yeah, the town of Morristown has a grant writing team, and through the Shade Tree Commission, we often speak with them about potential grants to go after currently, and oftentimes we see a grant come out and we say, don't have an open space trust fund, can't go after this one. we've had those conversations before. But yeah, the town has gone after and received grants in the past. It's not certainly not a new thing to the town. It's just there's more that we can be eligible for. Yeah.
Could I ask, Elliot, you mentioned demolition. Do you know if the Greystone Park demolition, and there's now open space, is it not? Was that?
Well, that was a county acquisition. I don't think when they did that, they had the demolition.
They had to take down the old stone hospital?
Yeah. But that was county spending its own funds. It wasn't in support of a municipality, which they will, if they grant funded a municipal project, they will fund the cost of demolition. County spending its own funds for its own acquisition, I'm not sure what they're limited to.
Okay.
And that was a bad demolition.
Well,
It was a bad demolition.
On another topic, I'm part of the Friends of Foots Pond, and it was impenetrably overgrown with invasives, multiflora roses and porcelain berries. Everything was covered. Right now, we're sitting on $20,000 that we've raised privately. There's a huge team of volunteers that come in from corporations, from the high school where students meet their obligations for community service. People come in every week and do a huge amount of volunteer work, mulching, putting down sheet mulch, planting trees. $5,000 worth of shrubs were delivered in the beginning of September to be planted at Foots Pond. So it's up to, right now, this is all because individuals are giving money or corporations. It would be nice if other parks had that benefit. They don't have a group of volunteers, but if this money were there, perhaps their local parks would improve. I don't know. But so there are sports, people like parks for sports, for passive recreation, and then there's the non-human use. So I think when we're trying to sell this idea to our residents, fellow residents, what is a good way to present this? Why they should vote for this?
It's a little bit, I think you should say it's scientifically proven that you need to maintain open spaces, because in New Jersey, I mean, I've just seen it in the years since I moved in 1994, which is, invasive species have come in to even our own yards. I mean, it had something to do with the deer, so it's a very scientific, verifiable problem, the invasive species, especially in New Jersey. And so I think we need the scientific community to back it up. I also think we need people to go to the municipal government meetings to make sure that not one penny of the this open space trust fund that might come about would be used to have a guy on a lawnmower doing something so ordinary. It has to be scientifically proven to be necessary.
So if Graham were my neighbor, how would I convince him to vote?
There's no downside. I'll say,
Okay.
there's no downside. It's only 1, 2, 5, there's no downside. There's only an upside, and what I mean by the upside is what you're talking about. It's the matching of the funds. It's actually being able to say you're in that classification, so you get priority for. This town does a very good job, I think, with getting grants. It really does. I think the grant writer, and it's not just the town, it's really the Shade Tree Commission. You guys are unique in and of yourself. Okay, I mean, totally outstanding. But I think we do very responsibly watch the funds. But there's only an upside to this. There's no downside whatsoever. You know, there really isn't. So people don't want to do it, they come out of budget fund, right? We want more people to pay attention to the budget. This is good. You know, but it's only an upside.
You can afford to restore several acres of parkland. If you look at something as large as Lewis Morris County Park, or the large parks in eastern Morris County, There are so many deer that eat all the native vegetation that nothing native grows anymore. Trees are not regenerating, and the biodiversity is narrowing and narrowing, and they're ecologically dying. And it would be so expensive to restore something of that size. But something the size of Foots Pond, you can get a handle on.
Well, it took 10 years.
It took
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
The bottom line on it is really, we're already paying into this, but we're not getting it back.
That's a good
And
point.
the bottom line, it doesn't matter, this is money that's available, but only if we have this set up. And I volunteered for New Jersey Audubon, Duke Farms, and, the Great Swamp National Wildlife Refuge. And the people I get coming in, the arguments about the deer and like that, it works with a lot of them, but a lot of people could care less. My neighbors are growing porcelain vine because they think the berries are pretty. Another neighbor really liked the smell of multiflora rose and put that in.
Honeysuckle is
And-
delightful.
Yeah, so
Welcome
this
to
is the
come and
bottom
take it
line,
from
and
us.
it's a financial consideration.
Well, if you really talk about accessibility and these vines that you're talking about, it's like, if you ever, do you remember pictures of, say, people coming into the jungles of South America? You have to go in with a machete. I remember just looking at one park in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, that it's like, wow, there's a bench here, right behind me is all this vegetation, it's impassable. Well, the colonists that got off the ships and could walk into the woods here. Now, you go to Jockey Hollow, there are sections you cannot walk because it's all invasives. And when you go in the spring, the only thing that's growing that you see greening up first are the invasives. So it's like, it actually seems there's more impassable woods if you have a preserved forest than passable in New Jersey if you don't do anything to maintain it. And then you're decreasing public access, and you're certainly decreasing, I mean, this is just me because I was on my environmental commission. Great Swamp Watershed Association, have a sump up in my basement because the swamp's in my basement. Anyway, but wait, what was my point? Just that invasive species need to be controlled. It absolutely it's a battle, and you need to walk into your parks, walk around Foots Pond. It was impossible. Even Morris Lewis Park, the trail, it should be beautiful. There should be native species as you're walking, instead of just invasives and an ability to just walk or bike. Yeah.
If this passes, the Morristown one, when would it go into effect? Would it be the 2026 budget or 2027?
Next budget cycle.
So
November,
this
so we
January-
would actually start working on the budget. Budget gets adopted because it gets adopted about June, so you got plenty of time between November and June. So you get started with the 1 cent, and then are there
Would that like start in January 1st, 2027 then?
the budget is usually adopted around June, but it is a calendar year budget, so it is retro, but it's the capital that we're raising. So it would be the next budget cycle, the very next budget cycle.
And what date is that?
It's odd because the budget, as you look at the tax bills, the budget doesn't get adopted, final budget doesn't get adopted, usually we do it around the May or June meeting, okay? But it's retro to the beginning of the year. Usually what we do is an
so it'll be
extension,
January 1st.
but you look at the budget, when you're doing a review of the budget, you're looking at it in its entirety. So if you're creating this fund, the fund will be created. That's why, if you notice, in your third and fourth quarter, it's always a different amount than your first and second quarter in your tax bills.
Okay, so I have a question, which you can answer.
Or
It has to do with budget hearings. What department would handle this question, open space? Would it be parks? Would it be public service? Or public works? What budget hearing do you go to?
Well, it's gonna
The
be-
public can go to the budget hearing.
It's gonna be a real interesting question, because to go back to Lewis's point. I get your name right? I apologize.
Ellie.
Ellie. Is, you know, what are we gonna use this for? I think initially there should be talk at council meetings, which I think it'll get vetted. Steve Polachek, who was actually behind this referendum here in Morristown, did a lot of work to get it through, along with a lot of other people. You know, Steve brought this so that there would be a discussion on how the monies are being used. You know, there is a lot of debate in town with the intensity of development. Why aren't we creating new parks? Okay, I'm from the first ward in Usurp. We only have 2 parks. One's on the other side of 287 in my neighborhood, and it's fabulous what everybody's doing for it, but it's kind of isolated. And then when you've got the most densely portion of town, which is actually between the center of town and 287, that is the most densely populated. We really have no parks except for this little thing called Woodhole, which is a tributary of 287
What I would suggest,
But-
and Burnham Park is an excellent example, is hire an expert firm to come up with a plan for you.
Well, interesting, but isn't that a function of the master plan?
It could, yeah.
In the master plan, there is an objective in the master plan, current master plan, adopted in 2016, that actually says preservation of open space is an objective of the plan. Yet, where is our plan? And I think what this ordinance will help do is put some motivation behind those discussions more, because it opens up the source, matching funds and other funds.
How do you pay for
How do you
it?
pay
Yeah.
for it, and how do you maintain it, and not, develop it, not maintain it.
And just one quick additional
All right.
thought, just.
Yeah,
on this.
we should wrap up
I
in the
will,
next
yeah,
few
yeah.
minutes, but go ahead.
So I mentioned the state enabling legislation, which is what allows municipalities to consider these open space trust funds. Within that legislation, it doesn't mandate how expenditure decisions will be made. It doesn't say, you know, what entity will make those decisions, but there are many communities that establish an open space trust fund committee, or they assign some existing committee to make recommendations during the budgeting process for how the expenditure should be made each year. So they might say, we're recommending that 75% of the funding be reserved for stewardship projects and 25% be reserved for park improvements like playing fields or capital improvements, you know, installing or replacing the restroom, whatever it might be. And so it's up to the municipality to decide what process they want to go through to decide what to prioritize and how to expend the funds.
Yeah, this is only the beginning, the referendum is only the beginning, yeah.
Question for Elliot. You mentioned that about 2/3 of the municipalities in Morris County have this fund and 1/3 don't. Do you have any reasoning? I'm guessing the more urban townships generally don't, and the more rural did, because there's reasons why. But can you tell us some reasoning why that is?
All I can do is tell you which ones have and which ones don't.
No, I'm trying to, I'm guessing it's the urban ones that skipped it, but it doesn't seem, it seems odd that they would skip it if you can get matching funds. So they
Yeah.
just not got their act together, or they got some reasoning here?
That's not a fair question. I can answer that. I
Yeah.
think in all honesty, and I'll put myself in this category, it's lack of awareness.
Oh,
And
that's
I
fair
think,
enough.
and that's honest, it's lack of awareness. We didn't know, and I think we're learning, you know, and I think we're learning a lot, particularly from people involved in Shade Tree, about the opportunity, but we weren't aware. I don't think there was any malice or
No,
any
I
kind
guess
of
it's
ignoring
guessing.
it. It was
But I
just
think
lack-
maybe they're not aware, it's because
Yeah.
they're urban, I mean, Morristown's
Well,
more urban, yeah.
I mean, Chatham Borough has one as well as Chatham Township. Chester Borough has one as well as Chester Township. I wouldn't say that the more urbanized don't.
All right, it doesn't have to be, I mean, it could be just as you say. People, it takes a while, but it has what, been 20
Yep.
years? I mean, it takes that long, these things do. Okay.
Okay, last question.
Quick question. Well, I've said there seems to be no downside, but a lot of people are gonna look at this on the ballot and say, that's an extra tax. I don't wanna pay an increased tax. What's the argument against that?
You just gave leveraging.
But it is an extra
Leveraging of
tax.
funds, well, but it's a very minimal about.
No, I realize that, but a lot of people unfortunately
Yeah,
don't
black
care
and
too
white
much
about
about
it,
the
yeah.
environment.
When the property that was owned by Loyola was for sale, the town negotiated and got a grant to buy that and add it on to Foots Pond. It took a lot of negotiation, and I think if we have this open space trust fund ordinance in place, it would have been a whole lot easier. That's all. And I don't know how many acres it was. How many
It was
acres?
actually a total of 22 acres. And actually, the initiative for that came basically from Loyola itself. They actually offered the land to the public trust, as
Wow.
did a few other people. But to go back to what you're saying, you want to know something? Taxes aren't a bad thing. And, you know, I'll say, as long as perspective is common good, and sometimes we don't think enough about future generations. Because if we don't preserve these lands and maintain these properties today, where are they gonna be for your kids? You know, where do we want our kids to live? And people better start thinking a little bit more in this society now about common good and not about like their own specific money
It's
interests.
also gonna be reflected in our property values. Yes, our property values have gone up quite a bit in the last
Yeah,
couple of years,
schools and
but
everything.
how our natural spaces reflect upon how we care about our lands is also gonna be reflected in the value of our properties, so.
It's well established.
I also want to, we didn't talk about the approximate dollars because you haven't gotten to how much is 5 cents, 1 cent versus 5 cents for an average home valued at a certain amount. But it is not very much. It's like,
$5
it
a
could be,
month.
yeah, it's like $50 on a house or $100.
An average of $60.
It's so small for what you get as quality of life. So I think that if you're going right to the dollars, you talk about a tiny amount of contribution to accessibility to your parks and expansion.
You barely pay for dinner.
Do you want to say anything?
Another strategy.
I'm not the expert, go ahead.
Another strategy that a lot of communities are considering when they're considering open space taxes is to really do an assessment of the need and to be able to point out to voters the various places throughout the geography of the town that would benefit, right? So if there's an inventory, if you have assessed the condition of your parks and you have an itemized list of these are the needs that we can't currently meet. By adopting this tax, we can then leverage our dollars with $2 from the state and $2 from the county for every dollar that we put in or whatever the ratio is. I think that you then can make a compelling case that everyone in the town will benefit one way or another.
You're gonna need to spend the money anyway, you know, on
Right.
a lot of the stuff, and now you get matching funds essentially
That's right.
to do it.
Just a question for Anthony. Do you have any knowledge about how those 9 acres were acquired by New Jersey Conservation? It might have been in the 80s.
Yeah, I don't have the history of that.
It's all like a big secret. Nobody knows it's there.
Well, I will give you my card and you can contact me. I'll do
I've
the
been down
research.
there. It's impenetrable.
Well, no, I can get you the history of it.
It's posted.
Is it really?
No trespassing.
That should be.
Oh, yeah, it's not welcoming. It's like keep out. If you go to Wetmore, you try to get onto your property.
Well, I'd be glad to follow up with you.
She's always right.
Sounds like we need a new washer.
She does her homework for sure.
Thank you, everybody, thank you very much. Thank you for participating. And the League of Women Voters, our next big event, much bigger than this, is we're co-hosting a rally in Morristown, right, at the municipal building, and it's called No Kings 2. And so and again, we're nonpartisan. It's a nonpartisan rally about due process and democracy.
When is?
No more kings, please.
Date.
October 18th, Saturday,
11 o'clock.
11
If you
o'clock.
want a kayak ride, see Graham. Graham will take you kayaking.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah, this is great.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah.